Speaking to me now is the Ring Magazine's Tom Gray. Tom, we had a few technical issues getting this interview set up, but we're there now, hopefully, and this is recording with the audio, which is what our problem was previously. I mean, how are you generally? How is this the virus affecting you and your work for the Ring Magazine?
Well, funnily enough, I've never been busier. It just the timing on it when it landed. We were actually wrapping up 2 magazines at that point, and that's basically been what's been going on over the last couple of weeks. We finally got there on both issues, but I've been really, really busy. The only difference is I've got 2 kids at home now instead of 1.
Yeah, that's the thing. The Ring Magazine's obviously a very prestigious magazine, probably one of the most famous, if not the most famous boxing publication in the world. I mean, that's obviously a pretty prestigious job you got there. I mean, how did you become is it associate editor of Ring Magazine?
Yeah. Well, I began doing, I'd been writing for a period of years covering small hall shows in and around the Glasgow area, and bounced around a couple of websites. And then I had access to Ricky Burns, which I got at the time when Ricky was training under Billy Nelson at that particular time. And I would pick up, exclusives from that gym. And I passed one on to Ring Magazine, which was about his upcoming fight with Kevin Mitchell. So that was really getting in the door. And then I started doing things for the website and just really progressed from there. But that's been about 7 years or so.
So with the Ring Magazine, what's your general duties? I know you're a writer and I read a lot of your work. I see the things you put on Twitter. But I mean, what else do you do for the Ring Magazine?
Well, a lot of what we get up to is a team effort. Doug Fisher is the editor-in-chief, who you'll see around. Brian Harty is managing editor. Lamar Clark's our art designer. And we put our heads together to see what's coming up in terms of cover images. I mean, we're renowned for our covers going back decades. So, from the whole evolution of the magazine is a team effort month to month. And we get it right most of the time. So I do a lot of magazine work outside of just writing. I'm involved in obviously the editing side of things for the website. I take care of a lot of marketing stuff behind the scenes that you don't really see, offers and subscriptions, merchandise. So I've got a lot going on. I'll do a bit of customer services if I need to. But there's numerous duties that I perform that don't get seen as much as maybe the writing stuff and things of that nature.
Something the Ring Magazine is very famous for, probably even more so the last couple of years, is the Ring Magazine belt.
Yeah.
Do you want to just tell us about that? And I mean, boxers, it seems now, that is the belt that they want to get. I don't know whether it's because there's so many titles out there and they've always been devalued, whereas actually the ring belt is so difficult to get, to even fight for it, never mind win it.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us about the Ring Magazine belt and your involvement in that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the history of it goes back almost 100 years now. Jack Dempsey was the first Ring Magazine champion, so that tells you how far back that we're going. I think the reason that it's so highly sought after is, the ring don't do, in any division, don't do mandatory challengers. There's never a case where a Ring Magazine championship can be won easily. Now, when I say that, I don't mean, a fighter can go in there and win a world title necessarily easy, but it's as hard as it gets. It's as hard as it gets to win a Ring Magazine championship. That's been the case from when it started right up to the present day. And, that's why a lot of fighters feel that that winning that one really proves that you're number one. I mean, you can win world titles, governing body world titles, but not be regarded close to being the best in your weight class. Unfortunately, with the amount of belts available, that's just the case. But I don't think that's the case. If you mention a Ring Magazine champion, whether it be Canelo or Tyson Fury, Vasyl Lomachenko, these guys are where they are today on merit, and that's been the case over many, many years.
And I believe I'm right in saying that. Oh well, you were here, so you can explain to us. I mean, how do you what is the criteria for boxers to fight for the ring belt, a vacant ring belt, should we say?
Well, if the title is vacant, the ideal scenario is number 1 versus number 2 in the Ring Magazine divisional rankings. There have been instances where number 1 fights number 3. That can happen as well. What that comes down to is just what is the difference between number 2 and number 3? Is it a big gap in terms of competition faced, how good they are on the eye? Do they pass the eye? Does 2 pass the eye test any better than 3 does? So we've had instances where number 1 versus number 3 works, but what you're looking for, I guess, the ideal scenario is if it's number 1 versus number 2, but it's not exclusive to that.
And I know the Ring Magazine, it is very reluctant to strip champions of the titles.
Yeah.
But you had a tricky situation a few years ago with Tyson Fury when he was inactive for a number of years, but obviously well-documented problems, which we won't go over again. How tricky a decision was that for the Ring Magazine, and were you involved in that decision to strip Fury, if that's the right term?
Yes, I mean, at the time, you're right, tricky is exactly what it was. By the time Tyson got stripped of his first Ring Magazine championship, he had already been stripped of all the governing body titles. And fans, think that there's a link there, and there really isn't. I mean, if Tyson Fury holds the Ring Magazine championship and 4 governing body titles, great. But if he holds the Ring Magazine championship and no governing body titles, it doesn't make a difference, So at the time, a lot of people were saying, well, such and such has stripped him, and so is this governing body, and so is that governing body. That didn't really matter. We were reluctant to do it because there hadn't been a split between the lineal heavyweight champion and the Ring Magazine championship for a long, long time. So we tried to give Tyson every benefit of the doubt. I was initially reluctant to strip him, but when it came around, he'd been given his license back, and we'd said, look, we need to put a time limit on this. I think Sefer Seferi was the first guy that he fought. That fight wasn't announced at the time, and the decision was made via the panel that we had to strip him of the title at that particular time. Tyson was understanding of it because he knew that we'd given as much support as what we could, but he's came full circle and won it again.
Another thing, the Ring Magazine, I believe I'm right in saying you're okay with champions holding belts in 2 separate weight divisions, which is something
yes,
the
absolutely,
governing body's not too keen on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had Canelo was holding, I think, junior middle and middle at the same time for a period. Floyd Mayweather, junior middle and welter. Going back to Sugar Ray Leonard's day, Sugar Ray Leonard was welterweight, junior middleweight champion. So yes, it can happen when you hold 2. Providing, I mean, Mayweather especially comes to mind because he was going from welter up to junior middle and back down again. So he was always fulfilling fulfilling obligations in both divisions. So he was able to hold on to both for a decent stretch of time. It can happen.
Yeah, and I believe I'm right in saying I think Joe Calzaghe held the super middle and light heavy as well.
That would make sense. Yeah, he'd won, I think, the Ring Magazine championship against Lacey or Kessler. Lacey, I think.
Yeah,
and then obviously had went up to fight Hopkins, and and that would make sense. I mean, obviously, he wasn't at light heavy for anywhere near the stretch of time, and retired after Roy Jones. But yes, that makes sense.
And I think as well, Calzaghe's light heavyweight reign was interesting in that he wasn't actually recognised by any of the official governing bodies. It was only the Ring Magazine that actually recognised Joe as a light heavyweight world champion.
Absolutely. I mean, I've spoken to someone about this. Now, who was it? I think it was Lee Selby, and Lee was saying, "I'll be the first Welshman to win world titles in 2 divisions." And I'm like, "Hang on," I said, "Lee." I said, "Joe Calzaghe held world titles in 2 divisions." And he said, oh, the ring belt, you mean? I said, that's all he needs. That's all he needs. There's no way that you could say that Joe Calzaghe, I mean, Hopkins at the time was the number 1 light heavy in the world, and that's who Calzaghe dethroned. So he was there in merit. Wasn't the best of fights, but it doesn't need to be the best fight. He was the better man on the night, and he deserved to win the championship.
Yeah. Another subject which is always controversial, rankings. I mean, are you involved in the Ring Magazine rankings system?
Yeah. Yep. Don't always agree with them, but I'm involved.
So I mean, what's the? I mean, how does the Ring Magazine collate its rankings? Because I think governing bodies are notoriously I don't like to use the word corrupt, but they are very
political. There's political stuff.
Yeah, they show favouritism to certain boxers from certain countries, of certain promoters. So independent rankings like the Ring Magazine and other publications are so important. So how do you guys make sure that you're giving a fair reflection on the true rankings?
Okay, well, I mean, Anson Wainwright, who is your countryman, Anson sends out an email every Sunday after boxing is finished for the week. If there happens to be a fight on the Sunday, that'll go through to the next week. But there's a panel of, say, a dozen of us worldwide, and everyone's meant to watch all the fights that are happening that involve fighters within the retrospective divisional top 10. So you should have an idea of what's happened, how good was the performance, who won, who lost, all the rest of it. And Anson will put out what he thinks is a fair reflection of the rankings at the weekend. And then everyone essentially chimes in. And what you end up with is a sort of democratic vote there. So if Anson is spot on, everyone will say those rankings look good. If a debate starts, then everyone chimes in until you get to a point where, 7 or 8 people agree one way, 4 agree the other way. The way it's meant to work is there's a democracy and an overall choice. Now, there's controversial things that go on. The most recent was Dillian Whyte overtaking Deontay Wilder at heavyweight. Now, we took a shellacking for that, and to be honest, I wasn't expecting it. I really wasn't, because I think what it comes down to is the heavyweight division is a glamour division. Everyone knows about it, so many people get involved. But if you get battered, not beaten, battered, look like you've never boxed a day in your life, then you're going to pay the price on the rankings. Now, that might sound harsh, but people were acting like Deontay Wilder dropping to number 3, I think it was some like major disgrace. And Dillian Whyte stepping in, I could understand if Dillian Whyte had no defining victories at heavyweight, but he did good solid wins, and he's never been, as much as he get beaten by Anthony Joshua, that was earlier in both guys' careers. Dillian's been on a good stretch, good run, and I felt that overtaking Deontay Wilder was merited. Some did, some didn't. It didn't go down well with the fans, but that was the decision that was made, and that was on a democratic vote too.
So do you get boxers and promoters and managers contacting you, either directly or indirectly, regarding rankings and ratings?
I wouldn't mention any names, but I can't say it's never happened before. But it's just the same. It's just the same story. It's decided by democratic vote. Things. I mean, in Deontay Wilder's case, I agreed with that decision. I went for that decision, but I don't always get things going the way I would like to see them go. I felt that Josh Taylor, regardless of the fact that he's the nationalistic pride and all that, I thought that Josh turned in a pound for pound performance against Regis Prograis, and not enough people agreed with me, which was a big shock. But I had to take it. On the chin. But you do get people. Yeah, I mean, I've had definitely trainers coming on and challenging it. I just said, look, it's not my decision. It's not even. Doug is very forthright in saying it should be done democratically, and he sticks to that. And it can frustrate him, but there's a reason why there's a panel, and that's what we use.
Just touching on feedback from trainers, etc. I mean, obviously you're a writer. You write for the Ring Magazine now, but obviously you back in the day when you were writing more local boxing, did boxers ever approach you and pull you up on certain things you've written about them? Whether I'm just saying, from my own personal experience, I remember I was on a podcast and I mentioned a certain boxer being a little bit a low work rate, if you like. Right. And when I was working for Welsh television, he happened to box, and he just came up to me and said, "Oh, were you impressed by my work rate tonight?" And it's like, no, he wasn't being aggressive, but he was just sort of making a point. And to be honest with you, I didn't even realise, I couldn't even remember even saying it, but obviously it stuck in his head. Yeah. Conscious of it, and as soon as the fight was over, he came straight over to me, but I was
Yeah, I mean it's fighters' pride, isn't it? I to be honest, I can't remember it. I mean, I can't remember an instance of a fighter feeling compelled to do that. I've made mistakes in my time. I was at a Ricky Burns fight. I can't remember. Jose Gonzalez. It was a WBO. I think it was a mandatory for Ricky, and I had a really terrible view of this fight. I was over in a corner. You know when you're kind of restricted when you're at ringside, but there's no excuse. And I was, don't get me wrong, I was, Ricky's a friend of mine and someone that I care about, but he knows that I was always, get journalistic integrity. If I think he's losing a fight or if he lost a fight, like I did when he fought Ray Beltran, I'll write it that way, but I don't know what the hell I was watching, and wrote a report on that fight that was as inaccurate as it gets. But everyone has those moments. I don't mind admitting mine. But I got home and I watched that fight, and I said, "Oh wow!" Ricky was losing that fight by a mile before he got the stoppage. So yeah, I've made mistakes, but I can't think of a time where a fighter's felt compelled to speak to me about anything that I've said.
And you're talking about making mistakes, or I suppose in the day and age of the internet, whether it's writing or podcasts or broadcasting, you can never forget your mistakes, and you can never forget if you make a bad prediction. Yeah. And then people are quite.
I've done that.
They're very quick to remind you of your bad prediction. So what would be your worst prediction?
You know what my worst prediction. You must know what my worst prediction. My worst prediction in recent memory is picking Mikey Garcia to beat Errol Spence.
Right. Yes.
Which was just over a year ago. But let me explain something. Right. So there's no explaining that. There's no explaining that choice. And I knew it within the first 60 seconds of the fight starting. But then it's too late. But I don't take predictions too seriously. Do you know what I mean? Like to me, it's a bit of fun. And I mean, I've had people still to this day are going to bring that one up. And I've had plenty of others. I picked Ruiz to beat Joshua in the rematch, which, even right up past the weigh-in when I had every chance to retract. So, I just don't take it too seriously. And so many people these days, it's became this thing where you pick one fighter and then put down 5 or 6 reasons why the other fighter could win. So that if you're wrong, you can say, well, I covered my tracks. I said if he did X, Y, Z that he might win. Pick the fighter, pick who's going to win, and if you're wrong, you're wrong. What's the big deal,
Yeah, and I think, am I right in saying that you actually made a prediction video for the?
Thanks for reminding me.
If I remember rightly.
Yes, I did, but I also made a prediction video for Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. So, and I got that one right, and made money at the bookies. So I made up for it. On that one. But listen, and to go over Spence Garcia, I'll have to get probably 100 predictions right before I live that down.
Just mentioned that the Tyson Fury fight there. I mean, some people thought that Fury would win. I mean, I thought Fury would win, but I didn't think he'd win in the manner he did. Mm-hmm. Were you shocked by the aggressiveness of Tyson that night?
Well, let's put it this way. When I initially had picked, my official prediction was Tyson to win on points. And the reasoning for that was he'd already done it. It didn't matter what the judges had said out in LA. Anyone with a pair of eyes knew that he deserved the decision. I picked him in points in the rematch until the weigh-in. And he was, the best part of 20 pounds heavy. He was 270 plus. And I got to thinking, when I was looking at him, at the weigh-in, he still had that kind of healthy sheen, still looked good round the face. He's not the type to come into a fight of that magnitude unprepared. And I said, okay, he's heavier, but I think the weight is by design. And that's why on the day of the fight, I changed my prediction from points to a late stoppage, because I felt as if there was no way he wasn't coming in there with a concrete game plan. And that's so technically, if he was going to use the weight to his advantage, I didn't think Deontay Wilder could handle it. If he lands a big punch like he has done so many times, then he's got the potential to take Tyson out, or anyone else for that matter. But in my view, he was due to run out of luck. And
I mean, Tyson Fury's got plenty of options now, but where does Deontay Wilder go from here now, do you think? Obviously, he's got the third fight with Fury. But whether that happens or not remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But what's next for Wilder, do you think?
Well, what you want to say is that he should bring at least someone in, maybe an assistant trainer. I don't think he should get rid of Mark Breland. I think Mark Breland's a qualified boxing guy who deserves to be where he's at. But at least bring someone in that can teach him some fundamentals. Where I think that all falls down is, I think he's turned 35 years old now. Now, how many things can you realistically add to your arsenal at that age? You know, this isn't Rocky III, where Apollo comes in and trains you up to be a completely different fighter. It just doesn't work like that. You know, in any time now where Deontay Wilder, you know, as experienced as he is in a professional ring, anytime he runs into difficulty, he's going to start relying on what's bailed him out 40 odd times before, which is the big right hand to the mouth and cleans you out. So I don't know really what else can be added realistically. I mean, I think that if you pour some Hollywood on it, he can add a left hook, or he can get his defense down. He can, you know, he's got a lot of things going for him. He's very athletic. He can get his feet into the right position, which allows him to get these big shots off, the big right hand off. The problem with Tyson was Tyson's got better feet than he has, and he knows where he is, and he's tough. And you know, it's the first truly elite level fighter that Deontay Wilder's been in against. No disrespect to Luis Ortiz, but you know, he's old and doesn't move anywhere near as well. So I don't know realistically what Deontay Wilder can do. But even though I'm saying that, it sounds doom and gloom. If he punches you in the jaw, connects cleanly, then you know he can still win fights and he can still win titles, no doubt about it.
I know it's a very sort of a fanboy type question, but where does Wilder go, or where do you place him in the hardest punchers in boxing history? I mean, there was a lot to talk about that prior to the Fury rematch.
Well, in heavyweight terms, it's statistically, I mean, I can't think of his record offhand. So you're looking at all but one of his wins have been by knockouts. His knockout percentage is in the high 90s. Brilliant, you know. In terms of record breaking, he's in terms of the numbers, he's the hardest punching heavyweight ever. The argument you're going to get is who he's been knocking out. You know, like there was title defenses getting made of that belt, his WBC belt. I think it was 11 defenses where the challengers were coming in, and I hadn't heard of them before.
Yeah.
Now that shouldn't be the case. He's got good wins in there. Again, the 2 over Ortiz. Brazil's a decent win, but there's a lot in there that quite frankly, you know, it's limited opposition, and I think that's what hurts him. When you're comparing him to, you're going to turn around and say, see, he can be a bigger puncher than, say, Joe Louis, right, on paper. But is he a better puncher? Absolutely not. Because Joe Louis would go around your internal organs in alphabetical order and finish you with a 4-punch combination. Have you ever seen Deontay Wilder do that? No. So at the end of the day, yes, he's been blasting guys out with the single dig. Yes, it looks good on paper, but is it a realistic reflection when you go down through history? No.
Just moving things on. I mean, what are you working on at the moment for the Ring magazine, Tom?
Well, just finished I did the cover story for Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, which was a real pleasure. I spoke to Roman and his manager, and I spoke to my editor-in-chief Doug Fisher because he's a huge Chocolatito fan, so that was a lot of fun. I was executive editor for the Four Kings special that we just completed very recently, which obviously revolves around the quartet of Leonard, Hagler, Danan and Hearns. We're hoping for good feedback on that. Plenty of work went into it, a lot of great writers, and the designer for that issue was a fellow by the name of Michael Cronenberg, who did a fantastic job. So that's just all wrapped, so I'm kind of getting over that. We're going into fantasy fight territory, I think, for the next magazine. I don't want to say anything yet because that's still in development, and I'll look like a bit of a fool if it doesn't all fall into place. But I've got plenty on. I'm paranoid. I'm the kind of person that gets paranoid if I've not got enough work. But right now, despite the crazy times and the terrible times that we're going through, I'm not struggling for work at the minute.
I suppose, in a way, as a writer, I mean, obviously this is a terrible thing we're going through at the moment, but as a writer, it might be slightly easier, would it be? Because obviously you don't have to actually physically go and interview boxers, perhaps the same way I would when I'm doing things for television or cable TV. I've got to physically go and interview the boxer.
Yeah.
Because you, I'm guessing most of the time you speak to boxers over the phone.
Yeah, it's one of the downsides of being stuck up in Scotland. I mean, it's not what you would call a boxing hotbed, although we've got terrific fighters. In terms of, yes, I mean, nothing needs to change in terms of what I do, in terms of phoning up fighters and blah, blah, blah. But it's finding something now to write about that's the problem. Usually the sport moves that fast, week to week. You know what you're going from, 2 weeks in advance. You know where you're going to be in 2 weeks. So things like that, that's difficult. But what we're trying to do just now, we've been releasing a lot of evergreen content on the website, Best I Faced, which Anson takes a lot to do with. We've been putting them out again. They get brilliant feedback. Greatest hits. Myself, Anson, and Doug have done a lot of those. Just great fighters that are going to move the needle. That's the kind of thing that we're trying to do. I'm due to speak, hopefully, to Antonio Tarver later on. A great career, a decorated career. Those are the kind of things just now that fans will want to read about. So we're going to keep trying to churn that out as much as we can until we can get into a better place with everything that's going on with the coronavirus. I'm
guessing you've probably interviewed hundreds, probably thousands of boxers. What would be a handful of your favourite interviews? The guys, well, hopefully it'll be a very long time, but when you pass from this world, people will say Tom Gray, he was the guy who wrote, what articles are you most proud of?
I've got you. I've sat down with Sugar Ray Leonard, who I've looked up to for well over half my life. Was a special moment. I sat down with Roberto Duran. There was one night where my first son was just born, and I'd been trying to contact George Foreman for an interview. And I was training at the time, so I was up early the next day, and I'd went to bed early. And the phone went as my wife got my oldest son down to bed, and it woke him up. So my wife starts going crazy, saying, who's this on the phone? And she answered the phone pure snappy, and it was George Foreman on the phone. So things like that just feel so surreal at the time. Interviews that I like, say in the UK, Carol Froch was always a challenging interview. Doesn't let you away with much. You need to be on point when you interviewed Carol. I liked Anthony Crawler. Is just a lovely fella. Great interview, sincere interview. There's so many. I rarely encounter any difficulties. I mean, I remember interviewing Adrian Broner, and as much as he talks, when he's got a mic stuck in front of him, he was the worst telephone interview I think I've ever done in my life. So I've had mostly ups and very, very, very few downs, but some brilliant interviews down the years.
And one of the privileges, I guess, 'cause I always use the word privilege, because even though it is a job, I always feel when I get a ringside press accreditation or press pass, it is a privileged position to be in, because ultimately you're getting paid to sit in a ringside seat that other people pay hundreds, thousands of pounds to watch a fight. So I mean, what are the fights that you've been privileged to be ringside for?
Well, by the way, I should say that Larry Holmes. I need to say Larry Holmes is one of the interviews I'm most proud of. Big Larry fan.
Yeah, just sort of going to Larry there. I mean, Larry has got a bit of boxing. I know I spoke to a few boxing writers who've interviewed Larry, and some people get on with him great, and other people find him a little bit of a prickly character.
Yeah, I'm the former. I met him in. I'm from a town called Motherwell, and he was on the the after dinner speaking circuit, and I'd arranged through the person that had organised that to speak to him, and I met him for breakfast the next day, and he was wonderful. And it took a while to, how do you say it? I don't want to say get him on side, that doesn't sound right, but I think it took a while for him to be comfortable with me. But once he recognised that I knew his career so well, it opened up a lot more. And I'm aware of the prickly interviews. They go way back, to 1985 specifically, without without mentioning any specific interviews. But with me, I just find him a dream. I think he's a wonderful interview and one of the best heavyweight champions that's ever lived.
Do you ever have a moral dilemma on what is on the record and off the record, so to speak? Like, because I mean, if you go around boxing gyms, and obviously you've got lots of contacts within boxing, you probably hear rumours and stories. And then, do you ever feel in a moral dilemma then? What do you publish and go public with, or what do you sit on, so to speak?
If it's part of the story, I think that, I'm not afraid to go after someone journalistically. I think that you do yourself a disservice by saying to yourself, I'll not ask this question in case it pisses someone off. It doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. You're not doing your job properly. And I know a lot of people really well in the boxing game, if I'm told, this is off the record or this is embargoed, then that's totally different. I mean, I won't breach confidence that way. I'm not what you would call a breaking news guy. I don't sit there with my telescope waiting for someone to fall down so I can get a scoop on a story. It just does nothing for me. But I mean, if I need to ask a question and I think the response is going to be salty, it doesn't really bother me. I think that you get respect with that. Fighters are very, very intelligent in the main. And they know why you're asking those questions. So, I can't tell a boxer how to box. So there's no point a boxer telling me how to write. So it's, I know what I'm doing.
I think as well, you made a good point there with Larry Holmes, that sometimes if a boxer knows, perhaps you've done a little bit of research about their career, and if you can ask them a slightly unusual or different question, I think the boxer tends to engage slightly more if they know it's not just a standard, how's your training camp been? You're looking forward to this fight type of interview.
Absolutely. So no, I mean, anytime, and with Larry, I can call Larry Holmes anytime and get a really good interview for him. The one that I got in Motherwell was fabulous. I can't actually remember doing a bad interview with Larry. What you can get, it depends on the mood that he's in. Like, he can get asked about Ali and say that he won because he was much better that night, or you might get Larry and he might say, I knew he was old, didn't want to hurt him. It just depends. See, he's went through such a period of time where he doesn't feel he's getting the respect that he deserves, and he does deserve it. He's went through so much of that he's very on the defensive. And I can understand that because he sacrificed his entire life to be what he became. And very few of us will ever understand, just how difficult that was.
Yeah, and he's probably up there. Well, he's certainly in the top 10, I'd say, heavyweights of all time, if not top 5.
He's well inside my top 5. Inside my top 5. He's actually I only put Ali ahead of him. Yeah. And if someone was to say to me that they've got him before Ali, I wouldn't even argue the toss. But I just think he was a terrific champion.
Yeah, I'm just going back to a previous subject there about fights you've been ringside for. So what are some of the fights?
Well, the one that stands out, Ciaran, was I went to Tokyo for Inoue and Donaire, or I should say I went to Japan. It wasn't in Tokyo. It was in Saitama. Nearly forgot that place there for a second. But I went over there. Inoue is my favourite fighter right now in world boxing, and I have admired Donaire for so many years. I've been lucky enough to see him a couple of times live. And I went over there looking for an Inoue performance. That's what I thought it was going to be. And the entire trip, I was only there 5 days, was one of the best, most surreal, exciting periods of my professional life. Just absolutely brilliant. And that was before the first bell rang. And then you got the fight of the year. That is the best fight I've ever sat live for, ever. Just to be in Japan when it's Inoue, when it's Donaire, when it's the final of World Boxing Super Series. I mean, I call it mini Manila, even though it was in a different place. Yeah. That's how it felt. The kind of ebb and flow, and I can't even. I've never seen a press row like it. Like, no one could believe what they were watching. And Donaire was spectacular. Inoue was spectacular. The entire fight was spectacular. It was just a brilliant, brilliant occasion. But that's the one that stands out the most.
And actually, I think we were sitting together for the Kovalev-Cleverly fight in Cardiff.
Yep.
I can't actually remember. What was your prediction for that fight? I generally can't remember.
I picked Cleverly.
Yeah.
I picked Cleverly on points, and I think a lot of that came down to the fact that I knew of Kovalev's reputation, but when I looked at the record, you'll need to help me here. He had a solid enough win against a former world title challenger that I'm blanking on the guy's name. Let's see, it's not Campanella, but something like, I can't remember this guy's
he had
name.
one or two decent wins, but nothing special.
Yeah, one or two decent wins, and I just felt as if, Nathan had chased that fight. But we're hearing a lot of things at ringside, and there was a really bad vibe before the fight started, and it was just a one-sided beatdown. Nathan just couldn't do anything with him, and that was the best I think Kovalev's ever been, or damn close to it.
Yeah.
He gave him a straw. But I remember what I remember about that night. I was staying in Cardiff, and that was the same night that Darren Barker, who did he beat for the IBF title? Australian guy?
DeGale.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Daniel
Gill. So, sorry, Darren. I watched that in that same night back at the hotel, and Darren get dropped on a body shot, and we thought he was finished, but he got up at 9.5, and the guy came down from the bar in the hotel and switched it off. And we're like, "What are you doing?" He got up. I'm like, "No, the fight's over. You've been here too long." And sitting with a bunch of boxing guys that night watching it, and I didn't even find out that Darren had won the fight until the next day.
Yeah,
crazy.
The Nathan Cleverly Kovalev fight obviously was a devastating result for Nathan, but it's a bit infamous as well for the way that the referee Terry O'Connell more or less carried Nathan back to the corner after the second round, I think it was.
Yeah. Was it the second? I thought it was a round prior to him losing.
Yeah.
Second or third? Yeah. I know you're
like that, yeah. I mean, how good or bad do you think British referees and officials are at the moment? Because they get a lot of stick. Some of it is probably fair, some of it is unfair. And obviously people have got a platform now on social media where they can
everybody gets it in the neck. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't think it comes down to Britain. I think that's, if there's any issue with referees, it's global. I mean, some of the worst decisions or some of the worst officiating I've seen have been by American referees. Tony Perez is one of my favourites for balls and things up. So I mean, I've been ringside when things have, in my opinion, not went the way they should have. I didn't think that George Groves should have been stopped by Carol Froch the first time. I thought that was a premature stoppage. But, we got it back, and I think we'd have been getting the fight back anyway, and Carol righted the wrong and won legitimately. But there are occasions. I'm blanking on the referees. Ian John Lewis, when it was Enzo against, Oval McKenzie, the first fight.
The first time, yeah.
Right, absolutely horrid. I mean, you could tell he jumped in for protection, but he'd obviously carried that into the ring with him before the fight had started. And again, that was another situation where Enzo had to right the wrong on the same card, right, on the Kovalev-Cleverly card, if I remember right. The rematch.
Was it that card? I can't remember.
I think it was. Need to check it, but I think it was.
But then again, with Ian John Lewis as well, I think he was the ref for Klitschko and Shannon Briggs, where Briggs had an absolute pummeling. And
so that's the opposite, right? That's the exact opposite. So I think with officiating, like anything else in life, there needs to be consistency. Ian John Lewis has had many, many great nights, but unfortunately, the world we live in, there's no news like bad news. If you make a mistake, people are going to be on you. Yeah.
So what's the ambitions for the future, Tom, with your boxing writing?
I'm really happy where I'm at the moment. I would, I'm associate editor of Ring Magazine. I got a lot of great assignments. I work with a lot of great people. I think I might, if anything, I might need to start delving into doing a bit more video than what I've done in the past. But other than that, I'm pretty good where I'm at. I don't really have any more dragons to slay. I'm good, just as long as I can pop my clogs working for Ring Magazine. Hopefully I've got another few years to go. But I'm quite happy where I'm at.
I mean, I'm guessing with the prestigious name of the Ring magazine behind you, it's fairly easy to get interviews with most boxers. But are there any interviews? Are there any certain boxers out there who you'd love to interview that are difficult to get hold of for whatever reason?
Floyd Mayweather's hard to get hold of. Now, you need to factor that down to the fact that Oscar De La Hoya owns Ring Magazine, right? He bought Ring Magazine a long time ago, and Floyd's not going to do Ring Magazine any favours, if we're being honest. So that may be the reason for that. Never interviewed Floyd, never interviewed Manny Pacquiao. I've never really found the reason to go after Pacquiao. Like, usually we've got other writers. Ryan Songalia interviews Pacquiao quite often, so there's no reason for me really to go after that. I think Anson Wainwright has too. But a lot of boxers, it takes a long time. I mean, I tracked Lennox Lewis for a long, long time before I get interviewing Lennox. Tracked Naz for 6 or 7 years. Then when I got him, I couldn't get him to shut up. He's brilliant. He's a wicked interview. But I mean, he was on. We did a fantasy fight between him and Pacquiao quite recently, and Naz gave me such amazing material. I don't know whether that was because.
Who did the ring experts pick to win that between Naz and Pacquiao?
Stephen Breadman Edwards, terrific trainer, picked Pacquiao to win that fight. Paulie Malignaggi picked Naz, and I was on the fence. So it was a kind of three-way. And I'm serious about it. I mean, you can see Pacquiao just bewildering Naz, perhaps with power and speed and getting everything his own way. But you can also see Naz at his best with terrific punching angles and the power he could generate. If he cracks Pacquiao, how are you going to know? How are you possibly going to know who can win that fight when both guys are at their best? So I sat in the fence. The other guys put up arguments for one guy. But yeah, I've had lots of fight predictions and stuff go wrong, but I've got most stuff going right.
So as well, you mentioned the trip to Japan. I mean, who decides which correspondents go to which fights, or do you generally do the British shows, or is it a bit of a pecking order, or is it just a bun fight?
With Inoue Donaire, there's a couple of things. First of all, Inoue was ring champion. He had won that title, the vacant ring championship, beating Emmanuel Rodriguez. So the fact that it was a Ring Magazine title fight, the fact that it was a World Boxing Super Series final, and I asked if I could attend it. I'd written both cover stories that Inoue had. We had the first one, which was white with the flag in the background, the Japanese flag in the background, and it was a big hit. You know, fans loved the fact that Inoue got the cover. And the second one was the manga cover, the manga kind of drawing. That was again a massive hit. And I think Doug had said I'd put a lot of work in. I mean, it's not like Doug's not going to bounce me around the world whenever I feel like it. Far from it. And we've got a lot of good guys like in the States, a lot of fine writers in New York, a lot of fine writers in the LA area. And that's where, let's face it, America is where most of the fights take place. But I can bounce around the UK pretty easily. I try to avoid London in the main because it's just too fast for me. But I can go to London as well. I mean, I've had some good times there. But I try to take care of the north of England in the main. But if I need to go to London, I'm up for that too. And there's a lot of big fights heading to London. Anthony Joshua will be back there. You've got Dubois and Joyce. So there's plenty of reasons to get down there too.
You mentioned Joshua there. Will we see a Joshua Fury fight? I mean, what's your hunch on that one?
I hope so. I mean, the way things were going, I was saying 2021 anyway, and with what we're going through at the minute, that could conceivably vault to 2022. I think it would be a shame if we don't see that fight. You know, the fans want you don't want a generation to halt where you can't definitively say who was the best of their generation. Now, at the minute, to me, Tyson Fury is the man, but until he beats Anthony Joshua or vice versa, you don't really know. Joshua get back on the horse with a good win over Andy Ruiz. Different style, to me that doesn't matter. Like, people talk as if Joshua's going to box now in every fight. He boxed in that fight because he had to, and it was a terrific choice. Similarly, who's to say that Tyson Fury went in a different direction when he's beaten Deontay Wilder in the rematch? Tyson doesn't usually fight that aggressively, but both of them have shown versatility. I think overall, Tyson's a more versatile fighter. I think he's proven that more down the years than he's got more things he can do than Anthony Joshua. But Anthony Joshua can do plenty. I mean, he's not Deontay Wilder in terms of what he can offer in the ring. There's a lot of things that Anthony Joshua possesses that would be a real danger to Tyson Fury.
And a fight that's probably, may or may not happen because of the coronavirus, was not even officially announced, but I think most people presumed Canelo was going to be fighting Billy Joe on May the 2nd, I think.
Yeah.
But also, I think DAZN has been putting pressure on Golden Boy to put Canelo in with Triple G for the third fight. So it looks like, the way I see it anyway, that Billy Joe may have lost this opportunity.
Yeah, and it's not the first time. I mean, he's had I had it in authority that he had signed contracts twice to fight Golovkin, and this one would be a shame for him to lose this one. But Billy Joe's not doing himself any favours at the minute with what's been going on. I don't know if that's going to have a detrimental effect on that fight being made for later in the year. If everything can get sorted out and they can do that fight, I don't know if Billy Joe's shot himself in the foot in another way. Never mind with everything else that's going on. It's a tough can of worms. I mean, he's a fighter in my view that's got absolutely everything, but he some of it is his fault that he's not been able to truly, reach his absolute potential, and some of it's his fault. It's been pretty dreadful recently, so we'll need to see how all that develops. I mean, he's currently suspended, at least in the UK. I don't think that would prevent him getting licensed in Nevada, which a lot of people haven't mentioned. He doesn't need a British boxing license to fight in Nevada.
Yeah, I mean, Billy Joe just seems like one of those guys who just needs to stay off social media, or at least
needs a good PR rep
run his social media for him.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just run things past a PR rep. I'm sure he can afford it, but it's not that the recent stuff. I don't condone that. I'm sure you don't. No one does. He's apologised profusely, but bad news like that travels. He's going to have to go a long way to live that down.
And of course, in this day and age, as we mentioned earlier, that's never ever going to go away now. That's on the internet forever now.
No, all he can do now is just get on with it, win fights. And Billy Joe does a lot of good as well, but you can't do good and then in the same token do that. And then there's other things that he's done in the past that just don't make any sense. He's supposed to be an ambassador for the sport and a role model for kids, and he's let himself down in that front a couple of times.
Yeah. Just a couple of quick questions. Your top 3 British fighters of all time?
Is this my favourite British fighters or the ones I think that are the best?
If you say the greatest 3 British fighters.
I'll go...
Well, when people ask, I normally say Calzaghe, Lewis, and then the third one is I always find difficult to.
Well, see, you've got fighters like Bob Fitzsimmons and Jimmy Wilde, and I mean, I tend to go the route that you go. I think that Joe Calzaghe, Lennox Lewis, Ken Buchanan to me was a wonderful champion. So it's difficult because I can go down the route of all the fighters from the early 20th century and all that as well. Like I say, your Fitzsimmons, Jimmy Wilde, etc. So it's difficult to get an exact, concise top 3. My favourite British fighter ever is Nigel Benn. That's a personal preference.
Yeah. I met Nigel in a few times. First time I met him is in Magaluf, I think it was, on holidays with some friends.
Was he staying near there at the time?
I'm not sure. I think he was DJing there for a while, wasn't he?
Right. Yeah, that's
He
right.
was with his family at the time. And
The last time I spoke, the last time I spoke to him, he gave me a body blow. And I wish I could tell you it was pleasant, but it really wasn't. We were at the boxing writers dinner in London, and he, I think I came up behind him and to kind of surprise him, and that wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, but one time I was actually filming Enzo Macronelli on the pads with Gary Lockett in Gary's old gym in Cardiff. So I was looking through the lens of the camera at Enzo, and they finished the round, and Enzo sort of walked up to me, and I just still looking through the lens, and he just lightly jabbed me in the stomach because I just wasn't ready for it, and I couldn't even see it coming because I was looking through the lens of the camera.
They know where to hit you. That's the problem. They know where to hit you, and you don't see much, so you don't even get bracing yourself. And when Nigel hit me, it must have travelled that distance. You know, it was just a dunt, but it felt as if it was going right through my solar plexus.
And I think just mentioning Nigel Benn, I think what a relief it was when his comeback was called off for whatever reason.
Well, I'd interviewed Nigel out in Australia, and this was a few years ago, and I could tell. Couldn't write it. He wasn't giving anything away, but I could tell he was interested in fighting even then. And I think the target at that point was a trilogy fight with Chris Eubank.
Yeah.
And then it started to change. He couldn't get Chris to agree to anything. Then Steve Collins' fight was talked about, and then it was Saki Obika, right? Was the guy that he was going after. But yet, to me, you know, as much as Nigel might not be happy with the way his career closed, and I think a lot of it came down to the way he felt he was conducting his personal life as well. He wanted to get over a couple of things there, but to me, into his professional career was mission accomplished. You know, he's a 2-weight world champion. To me, he's a Hall of Famer. I think that both he and Chris Eubank, and I wasn't the biggest Chris Eubank fan, I was all Nigel Benn, but I just think that they get overlooked in Hall of Fame terms. You know, the tragedy with the Gerald McClellan fight overshadows that ring accomplishment, because for Nigel Benn to win that fight, and yes, the referee had a nightmare, I get all that, but he took him through real hell to prevail in a fight that was as difficult as it gets, and that's one of the best triumphs in a British ring. It just went horribly wrong afterwards. But yeah, to me, on the record, Nigel Benn should be a Hall of Fame fight. He won both his world titles away from home, and he was a magnificent prize fighter.
I think as well, people forget his win over Ciaran Barkley, a first-round knockout.
Yeah, and that's away from home, you know. Yeah. So he won. It was DeWitt, wasn't it? And then Galvano. Yeah, Doug DeWitt for the middleweight. Galvano in Italy. Yeah. I mean, winning a world title in Italy is not easy.
And then the Italians they were trying to pull a fast
a DQ or a DQ, or they were trying to get a no contest. But either way, Nigel won 2 world titles away from home, a title defence like you say against Ciaran Barkley, who was still very dangerous. I'd need to check this, but I'm sure he beat Thomas Hearns for the second time after that fight.
He did, yeah.
So, you know, Ciaran Barkley was still, that's a sensational victory that night as well. And Gerald McClellan added into that. It's a Hall of Fame resume as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and it's just a shame. It still bothers me now. He shouldn't do. But it still bothers me that he didn't get the win against Eubank in the second fight.
I was the same. I watched it live on ITV when I was a kid, and I thought it was a no-brainer that he'd won it. I think a draw was a very unfair result. I've never met anyone, not one. You see, usually when you get a draw like that, you'll even meet 1 or 2 people that say that they thought that the other guy won the fight. But have you ever met anyone other than Team Eubank who say Chris Eubank beat Nigel Benn the second time? Because I've not.
No, I think McGuigan had a draw on the night. I think he was working for ITV. I think he had a draw, I seem to remember. Yeah,
well, Barry's, he won't like me saying this, but Barry's prone to mistakes as well. Barry thought that Chavez Randall 1 was close, and Randall was winning that fight by a country mile. So, you know, everyone can make mistakes. I'm sure Barry would like to have that one back. You know.
That's one thing as well, that I think people who perhaps only watch boxing on television sometimes don't appreciate how different it is when you're there in the venue, or if you're very close to the ring. sometimes a fight can look totally different from when you watch it.
It can do. I mean, the one I referenced earlier with Burns and Gonzalez, that was just a terrible night for me. But I've come back from fights. I mean, usually I'm pretty close though. I mean, for example, Taylor and Prograis was a relatively close fight. But on the night I had it 8-4 Taylor, and when I got home I had it 7-5. So a 1 round shift. But to me, even at 8-4, because the rounds were competitive, it was still, to me, it was a close but clear win, if that makes sense. And sometimes the action doesn't necessarily, sit exactly the way the scoring does. You can have it 8-4, but Prograis gave Josh Taylor hell that night. There was just a huge section, I felt, in the middle where Josh took command. So, by and large, I'm pretty close to what my ringside tally would be. And I've scored many fights after, particularly if I think, I'm trying to think of ones where, I mean, I wasn't ringside for Ward Kovalev, but I had Ward winning that by 1 round. Now, a lot of people had that. I think every scorecard was 114, 113. I know other people that had it 114, 113, but people were going crazy if you thought Ward won that fight. And, I understand it, but I watched it twice and had the same result. So, I can't do any better than that. That was it. That was it.
Yeah, and you mentioned him earlier. I feel we should touch on him. Ken Buchanan, Scotland's probably greatest fighter, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I presume you've interviewed Ken at some point?
No, I have not. I was going to speak to him, but Anson Wainwright leapfrogged it and got Ken Buchanan for a best I faced. However, I've got it in my head that at some point Josh Taylor will get a Ring magazine cover. Got it in my head that, providing everything goes to plan for Josh and he keeps winning, or if he became undisputed, if he beat Ramirez, then I would like to interview Josh and Ken Buchanan at the same time. So I've got that in my head.
I inquired about interviewing Ken Buchanan for KOTV a couple of times, and for various reasons it was pretty difficult. It wasn't straightforward.
No, I hear you. I mean, just keep trying. I mean, my whole thing, I've got a list of fighters that were very, very difficult to pin down. But if you're persistent, the key in this game in many ways is just to not give up. And,
I think the thing,
unless they tell you like really to stop trying,
Yeah, I think the difference, I guess, again between like yourself who works with writing and myself more visual online and TV, I've got to physically bring my camera to interview, let's just say Ken Buchanan.
Yeah.
And if he decides not to do the interview, then I'm in Scotland with a camera and nobody to interview.
Yeah, I mean that's not going to be an ideal situation at all. But no,
I've been lucky that a few times I've gone to interview different boxers, and like when I went down to Brighton to interview Eubank and Eubank Jr. for KOTV a while back, and
I remember it. I
was thinking, I hope these guys turn up now, because it's a long way to go. But thankfully they were both there and they were both great. But,
yeah, brilliant. I've never interviewed Chris Eubank either. I'll tell you a story. I phoned Chris and asked for an interview, and he said, "Phone me tomorrow and I'll give you a time." So I phoned him the next day and he answered and he said, "This isn't going to work for me for 6 months." And I said, "Chris, it would be better if you just said no."
Yeah.
Just say no. But I've never interviewed him, and he's his son's a very, very good fighter indeed. He's another one that needs a couple of career defining wins, something pretty positive.
I think with Eubank, he was actually out in Africa at one point training boxers. I can't remember which country he was for. He was the national coach of an African boxer.
Vaguely remember it, yeah.
And I think I was the first person to interview him for years for anyone for British TV, because he hadn't done interviews because he was obviously out overseas and doing whatever he was doing.
Right.
So I'd arranged through the interview through Eubank Jr.'s agent, I think it was, or his press guy, whoever it was. And I was actually leaving the local Tesco's near where I live, and Eubank Jr. Senior phones up, didn't recognise the mobile phone number. I just, who's this? And it was a senior phoning me up just to arrange the interview.
Right.
Bit of a surreal moment, really. But
excellent. You had better luck than I did.
Yeah, I think at the time Junior was just I was lucky that Junior was he just started to come on the scene, and it was good.
Right.
It was more publicity for him.
Yeah, makes sense. Sometimes you need a stroke of luck and a good bit of timing.
Yeah. Just about mentioned Junior. The fight with Triple G, that obviously didn't take place. It was, I think Kell Brook stepped in, or was given the opportunity. I mean, why didn't that fight happen? Can you remember from your point of view? I mean, was it? I mean, Eubank even claims that he wanted the fight.
Yeah, it was. I mean, to me, initially it looked like Chris Jr. wanted it, and then, if I remember right, I watched an interview with Senior after that, and I think it was something to do with options. Like Matchroom would have all sorts of options on Chris Jr. That's what I believe. If I'm getting that wrong, apologies, but that's what I believe was the case. That Team Eubank was not happy with the amount of sway that Matchroom would have with Junior's career thereafter, because Chris Senior, to I think Junior's detriment, on occasion has been too involved, and that's maybe another case where he's cost him a big fight. Would it have been a winning fight for Chris Eubank Jr.? I sincerely doubt it. But you're not going to know how good you are until you test yourself against the very best. I mean, he's had big fights. Billy Joe Saunders was a big fight. George Groves was a big fight. But the common denominator is he came up short twice. Yeah. And even though he got the win over De Gale, which was high profile, James De Gale wasn't the James De Gale that we remember. You know, he had suffered injuries, etc. So Chris Jr. I think is brilliantly talented, but he needs a trainer that's going to keep him on the straight and narrow. He needs someone that's going to keep him right in terms of his business choices, and he needs to post some big wins. He was very unlucky last time out. Can't remember the guy's name. Fought Andy Lee, suffered an injury at the end of the first or the second round. Very, very unlucky. But I'll tell you what, that guy was having his way with him before the fight was stopped. So, you know, we'll need to see what he's able to do in the future.
Yeah, I think that was the same night as the Joshua Ruiz.
Korobov, wasn't it? Korobov, is it?
Yeah, and it sort of went under the radar a little bit just because, obviously, the news was Joshua, wasn't it?
Correct. It was Korobov, but he was catching Chris Jr. with all sorts, you know, just boxing the head off him early. And to me, it looked like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Chris has got the potential and the ability to turn that, but it didn't look good in that opening round. Was it 1 round or 2 rounds it went?
I think it was 2 rounds. It was called off.
End of 2. So he needs some serious momentum. But just the way things are at the moment, everyone's knocked off course, and some can afford that a lot less than others.
Yeah. Okay, Tom. Just wrap things up here. It's been good to chat with you. Thanks for your time this afternoon.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
No. It's been good to chat to someone about boxing.